A lot of my clients moved on with Uncle Joe, and they left Uncle Al to take it to a higher level for the sales training they do.
Please welcome America's service sales coach, Joe Crisara.
Welcome to the Service MVP Podcast, the show that helps home service professionals master high-value sales, build stronger client relationships, and grow their business like never before. Join industry experts as they share real strategies that drive results. If you're ready to level up your service game, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
It's the Service MVP Podcast.
Thank you for listening and watching the Service MVP Podcast. I want to give you a copy of my free book. Just click on the link below in the description and one will be sent to you from me personally. Thank you so much for listening. Welcome to the Service MVP Podcast, and my name is Joe Crisara, America's service sales coach. And we have with me one of my great respected colleagues and friends, a man who is definitely somebody that we kind of run a parallel path through this industry. It's Mr. Al Levi from the 7 Power Contractor. Al, welcome to our show today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about things that we both love, which is contracting.
Well, I think we both know that this will be a very honest conversation, even if it's not popular. So that's all we ask is about honesty. It may not be what people want to hear, but it'll be the correct thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, both of us have a habit of poking you in the eye to wake you up.
Exactly. That's it. We're kind of like, we were disruptors before they invented the term.
That's exactly right. But what's fair is both you and I were in the business. It wasn't like we were born into what we do today. We've been in the trenches and we came up and we took our own medicine before we gave it to you.
Yeah, that's why we're so good at it, because we know exactly what's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It takes us a little while to build trust with you so that we can tell you what it is.
Right, exactly. Well, Al, thanks for coming on today. Today I just want to go over, I always say the real service begins, like there's external service we do for customers, but there's the internal service we do for the team. And I think what I see, and it hasn't really resolved itself ever, although you've done a great job with trying to resolve this issue. And that is, I feel the first service that we do for our team is to document the procedures and processes for our company so that it makes training, the thing I do, a reality, because you can't train without the documentation of the training. Otherwise, you're just shooting it. So, Al, what did you get into this process where, like when I saw what you were doing, I'm like, this guy is a brother from another mother. He doesn't even know it, but I was admiring you from afar, fawning over all the stuff you do, and I think you were kind of doing something like that with me too. So
I knew how great your sales stuff was, and a lot of my clients moved on with Uncle Joe, and they left Uncle Al to take it to a higher level for the sales training they do. But yeah, we both kind of run in these concentric circles with a lot of stuff that crosses in the middle.
Why don't you tell us how you got started with this, Al? What inspired you to get into this part of the business?
Well, actually, the story is I was born into it. I was third generation, started out of my grandfather's gas station in 1936. Dad and uncle took over, especially when they got back from World War II and got down, and we were in fuel oil heating. And for those people who are not in the Northeast, think of propane heating. That's really was our first and foremost business. And then my brothers and I showed up, my 2 older brothers and I showed up late 70s and early 80s, and then really began to expand the business, went into what we call hub and spoke, multiple shops. Then really what I realized, because our customers kept asking us, oh, we love what you do. Could you also do our air conditioning? Could you do our plumbing? And our answer, of course, was no. But I had been to a great Nexstar seminar and goes, bite your tongue, listen, and then come back. And I said to my brothers, I go, if we don't do plumbing, gas heating, air conditioning, and finally the last one is electrical, we're going to let our competition own our basement and we will be locked out. And the good news is we had already mastered what it took to run our first business, which was operating manuals, org charts, training that builds on that, where we could take young, willing apprentices with no skills to willing techs with great skills. I had read a book, I guess it was probably the 80s or 90s, not really sure of the date, but Employer of Choice. And my brothers and I both had a lot of hard level conversations about that. because we were a New York City union shop.
Yeah,
And Joe,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
you'll appreciate this. I just loved when my clients would tell me, well, Al, I'm not sure it's going to work here. And I go, really? I'm in Des Moines, Iowa. You think it's going to be harder than getting a New York City union shop to come
Right.
along with you on these things? And so, yeah, we really decided to lock into this, offering a career, not a job. And so many of us like to say that, but where's the proof? Where is the systems? Where is this training pipeline? During the COVID eras, both of us, we all hang out in social media things, and we see the posts that are going on. Oh, I can't find great text. I can't find great text. Well, no kidding. That's new to you, but it wasn't new to me and Joe. We knew that problem way before this.
Right.
And if we didn't develop our own people and have this pipeline, and luckily for the people that I had worked with, they already had this pipeline going. So they had all the text they needed. They just needed some trucks because they were hard to get.
Well, Al, that's a good point there. Like, but even something like that's the value of the service of documenting these procedures and processes, because that's a really good example, honestly, to say, oh my God, we need another helper, or we need another installer, we need another service tech, we need an office person,
Yeah,
and
bookkeeper, somebody answer the
then
phone,
they don't,
dispatch, yeah, everything.
and then they don't document it, and so every contractor starts over again whenever they need somebody else. They don't have it documented, so you can just take it from there. Tell us about that. Is that one of the mistakes you see people make? Is
Oh
not
yeah,
have that
yeah,
process documented?
yeah. And to be clear to everyone listening, I was not born enlightened. I made every stupid mistake you can make as a contractor. The only thing that I will give myself credit, Joe, myself and my family, which is when I finally got to the point where I fell in a hole and I climbed myself out, I said, man, that hurts. I'm not going back in that hole again. But you and I have watched people climb out of the hole and fall right back into it again.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of this comes down to your organization can only run because you're the glue that holds it together, or you have some magical person that has sat next to you long enough and is now magically going to take, spackle and get the wall finished up enough, patch it up. But heaven forbid, and what I taught my own team is that you may be great, but what happens if you walk across the street and a bus hits you? Bad for you, bad for your family, but it's bad for all of us. We have to start all over, and we don't have any way to do that. So one of the things that my job was originally, when I realized I really got passionate about this, I basically spent a year putting together the outline for the manuals for everything on that org chart. And now I never took a year off, just to be clear. I was still working in the business. I was doing all the things that I needed to do. But while I was doing that, I was documenting what I did. And I always share the story and say, and workshop, or when I'm doing a seminar and stuff, is fortunately there was no video of this, Joe, but I would run a call either as a tech or as a system advisor, a big ticket sales guy. And I'd pull my truck around the block so I wouldn't be seen by the customer. And I would turn to my passenger seat and go, this is what I was doing. And then I would write it down.
That's funny. Well,
Yeah.
you got to start somewhere, right?
And then I applied it to the accounts payable person, the accounts receivable person, the warehouse person, the install manager, each and every one of them. The big thing that made this go next level was my father had taught us basically, hurry up and do something and the money hopefully will follow. And it did, but it was just pure chaos. And what
Yeah.
I always stress is if it's not somebody's job and nature abhors a vacuum, one or two or nobody's going to do the job. And the example that I do was being from the air conditioning business is many times you had to put a rooftop unit right up there. You need a crane to do that. So Joe, would you like to guess on any given day how many cranes would be at a job because it was nobody's job?
Zero.
Zero? Or here's the second worst, two.
Oh, wow. No
Yeah,
good.
because yeah,
Overlapping. Right.
and that's just one example of the craziness that would go on. And so by defining the org chart and
Yeah.
its relationship of where everyone is, and not for your ego, is really, it's not about the C-suite. I'm talking about CIO, CFO, CTO, all of that stuff. That's all very important, especially you get big and great, but it's not the boxes it takes to run your company. Finally, we got down to defining it. And I would love to tell you it was a normal conversation, but me and my two older brothers, especially we in our 20s and 30s, Joe, nothing was normal. And we were, born and bred New Yorkers. So we were
Yep.
happy to tell you our opinion. So how it came about with the org chart one day was my brother Marty was the financial inside guy. Basically, thank heaven, took care of what was going there. Or the Richie was the outside guy. And I was kind of the bridge between the two, bouncing back and forth. And so he would get to the office like, 6 a.m. and he gets the first call from a customer who's unhappy about somebody was here yesterday and I have no heat again. And then he'd go across the hallway and start screaming at the service manager. And by the time I showed up at 6:30, my first job of the day, Joe, was to walk the service manager off the roof before he jumps.
That sounds
And then,
accurate.
yes, and here's the second kicker to this is I would get to the dispatch desk and I would set it all up to get the momentum for the day and how to maximize things. And just back in the days when there were paper tickets and things of that nature. So I get a phone call from one of our big suppliers. To understand the background, my dad raised me and my brothers is that the suppliers, your vendors, get paid before you do. Because when push comes to shove, they're going to take care of us. And by the way, like most of my dad's advice, he was spot on. Because when Hurricane Sandy devastated Long Island, which is where our market was, guess who got taken care of? We lost 20 trucks, Joe. 20 trucks went under salt water.
Wow.
The enterprise took care of us like champs. And that was just one of them. And we had stuff built up to the ceiling from all of our vendors because of this relationship. Anyway, on the phone call, he goes, "Oh, Al, I'm sorry. I see this bill's been over. Would you mind taking care of it?" I go, yeah, no problem. I hang up the phone and I race across the office to the accounts payable person. And I start ripping into them to the point that Marty now has to talk them off the roof.
Yep.
So Marty and I are standing between the service department and where he sits in the hallway. And I look at him, Joe, and I go, "You don't like how the service department's run? You tell me and I'll take care of it." And he goes, "If you don't like the way the bills are getting paid, you come see me. I'll make sure it's taken care of." And we looked at each other and we go, that's really good. We should write that down. And that was the birth of the org chart.
That's really great. One thing I wanted to touch base on, one concept you just brought up there was really important, which is that when I go to offices and I definitely, I've referred you probably, I don't know, I had to be at least 300 times I referred you to people because when I said, "Well, who does this job?" And they say, "We all do this job." And I'm like, that's the enemy of good service when we all, like you talk about the guy who's ordering the crane. We both ordered one. Oh, darn, thanks.
But
Like
nobody,
that kind of
I
a
thought
thing.
I thought you were going to get the crane.
Yeah. It's like I do this kind of thing. So I thought they got it, right? That's it.
People who are old enough know the scarecrow.
You wrote a book called The 7-Power Contractor, which I've read several times, and I've given as a gift to several. I bought it myself and given it to people too because it's so valuable. Could you give us a brief thumbnail of The 7-Power Contractor? I know it's a lot to ask to give us a whole book report in about 15 minutes, but is there anything you could do to give us sort of like a?
I'm going to go.
What does that refer to? The 7-Power Contractor.
Yeah, the 30,000-foot overview, which was when we finally decided to get ahead of what all this chaos that was being caused at our shop. And the good news is most times we did make money, but some of it was by accident and not repeatable and not scalable without a tremendous amount of effort. So what it really refers to is planning power, which the summary short version of it is a master project list. So think of it as a funnel. Top of the funnel is every great idea that you want to get done, whether it's a project or a habit, goes to the top of the list in the master project. And that is where any idea needs to go. And it works its way down the list to the top 30 by either fixing the biggest problem or challenge or greatest chance to grow and be profitable. No one, and I have worked with shops that are 250 million, no one can work on 30 projects or habits effectively all at one time. So you take the same strainers again, fix the biggest problem or challenge, greatest chance to grow and be profitable, and you arrive at the top 5. And so on the top 5 literally gets put up on a whiteboard. And by the way, that's still today on a whiteboard. and not in your office, Mr. Owner Manager, out where everyone sees it. Because there's
Mm,
3 things on that. What do I need? Why do I need it? And what is the status? And that is them holding you accountable to you saying, I'm going to work on these 5 things that are going to make our company less, fix the problem, challenge, greatest chance of growing profitable. So it's really working on the right thing at the right time in the right way. That's the 3 rights of planning. Once
nice.
you have that concept, then operating manuals or process, which is these org charts. Think of it as a bingo board. And then covering the boxes with a manual, or which is really a playbook. And one of the things that I have to always stop and correct these days is people go, I have SOPs. And I go, standard operating procedures in the absence of nothing is really good. But let's talk about what SOPs are. They're checklists. So if all you're going to do run your company on is a bunch of random SOPs, it's like me having Post-it notes all over a whiteboard. An operating manual is designed to be a playbook. And like you talked about, Joe, when somebody shows up now and either going to give us depth at a position, like multiple techs, or accounts receivable person or accounts payable person's not in, well, who's cross-trained to do that? And without the playbook, which covers the 80%, they're really handicapped unless they happen to be able to read your mind. And I'm laughing about it now, but that's really how we ran our business, Joe. And we were not small. We were 17 million at the time.
Right, right.
We just expected everybody to read our minds.
I do want to stop there for a second because standard operating procedures is just a standard. I always tell people that's your problem. You're using standard operating procedures. You need to get specific operating procedures. That's not standard ones. Does that make
Yes.
sense here?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And look, you can use AI as a good tool, as a tool in a toolbox. Now, you really know you do have to edit because AI is famous for if it doesn't have an answer, it'll just make one up. And
Right.
that's dangerous in the work that we do. So, having said that, it's really more about the playbook of what it takes to do the 80, not the 20 weird, and not even going after perfection. Listen, Joe, we talked about before we go on to the next thing, which is what gets in the way of the contractors that we've worked with. I guarantee you the answer will be, in my case, they're perfectionists,
Hmm.
which is how they got ahead. Listen, I got ahead, even though it was my family business. My father started me at the bottom, that started me at the top,
Yeah.
and how to work our way up. And what made us good as perfectionists. What gets in our way is being a perfectionist. And the
Mm.
analogy I came up with for guys is you're in the garage building the greatest race car that will ever race. And I've already gone around the track and won because you never got it out of the garage. And so if you're listening here today, pay attention, take away one thing. The pursuit of perfection is great. Demanding perfection is insanity. And
Mm.
it's not good for your health either. And it's
That's
not good
interesting.
for anybody that's going to try to work with you.
I agree with that. You know, it's interesting you say that about the thing with the perfection is the enemy of progress. I always say because it's like we're stuck. It gets us stuck with perfection, and nothing ever gets done because they do that. You know, and the one thing I wanted to comment on is the AI. It was one of my questions I was going to have. I think you answered a
Yeah.
lot of it there. But one of the things I noticed is this: is that going back to that standard operating procedure, that's essentially what AI will do because what you're not doing is what you teach, which is not just the procedure, but the strategy and the vision, which is what that org chart does provide. It provides vision and strategy, which AI, you'd have to be a master prompter to be able to get all that in there. I think that's one of the things where you, Al Levy, the inspirational and experienced human, can kind of intuitively and constructively, because you walked down this path so many times before, can include the strategy, the vision, along with the procedures to execute that vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And actually, revealing my age, Joe, is that I came up with an era that when I was working as a helper there was no such thing as asking, why am I doing this? And, and also the way I learned my pipe sizes, don't freak out if you're young. If I handed up the wrong size fitting, it came flying back at my head as fast as I handed it up.
Uh-huh.
You'll get to know that, which you cannot do today. Just take another thing out of this. You cannot do that anymore. But if when people used to complain to me about millennials, and now we're on to the next generations, but people, oh, millennials don't have this and they're not like the same as us. And, they don't have the work ethic. And all I have to say is BS. I train millennials countrywide and Canada too, by the way. And they are some of the best employees. But here's the kicker. They're not doing anything until they know the why.
That's good. A good point there.
Yeah.
I think that's where that strategy comes in, like the strategic and the vision kind of explains the reason why this is so important. I don't think anybody can be inspired unless they know the purpose or how the cog fits into the other wheel. Does that make sense, sir?
It does. It does. And, we would always, touching into our next favorite, sales power, but I'll leave that on the side for a minute. My sales was mirroring a lot of what my dad did. And he was not like me. He was very quiet, very unassuming, a great listener, which of course made him a great salesperson, because how many times, Joe, have you tried to tell these guys, it's not the great talker who's the great salesperson. It's the great listener who's a great salesperson. And using your diagnostic tools to diagnose the customer is really the most critical thing before you get busy just diving into the job. And so those skills apply to so many things to get really better at all of this stuff. So we talked about operating power is the manuals and the rest of it. Sales is what we're touching into next, and that's fine. It doesn't matter the order of the 7, just know the 7. The 7 is improving your techs if they're empowered to sell and do the work. And if they're not, and you do like what you have is, the call by call tech or the super tech, where they sell the stuff and then somebody else comes behind them and does the work. The point is to sell it right. And sell it right is you're not making decisions. You ask great questions. You look around at the whole job to know. Years ago, I came up with diagnostics visual surveys for all the trades we did. Joe, it was not to sell more stuff. It was because of the incident that happened to me. I was, of course, on the 3rd floor in a big old colonial house, and I'm working on a toilet, and I snap a fitting behind the toilet because I figured I could catch it on the fly. And of course, I was wrong. And water is cascading now. And I come scrambling down the staircase to the basement to go find the water main. And there's wood panel, wood panel, wood panel. Every wall was wood panel. Good luck finding the fitting where that valve should be. And so I came up with a list, a visual check to go check these things because of that situation. Is when should I have identified where the water main was and whether or not it was a water main that needed to get fixed or replaced? The answer is before I went to work on the toilet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the happy news of this is with these surveys that were very quick, we actually ended up selling more, but our quality of sale was way higher. Does that make sense to those?
Yes.
They're talking
Yes.
about? Yeah.
Well, I've seen you write these manuals over several decades as we've kind of ran these parallel paths, and I've actually had a lot of clients who I recommended them to because it is a great solution to be able to get the specific operating system you need to achieve that vision and strategy. Tell me this one question. You did mention the different generations. Is that one of the pivots that when you explain things to the generation of the younger generation, that they do need more empathy and in the writing of the manual, or not empathy, but more the why or more the reasons in there? Has it changed at all, Al? Tell me about that.
It has changed over the years, especially from boomers to the next, to the next, to the next. It certainly has. And what I share with people is I'm 71, but really, Joe, I'm a 7-year-old. And I'm a 7-year-old in this way, which is I need to know what's in it for me. What do I get if I do it? What happens to me if I don't? And all of us are wired. I don't care you grow out of it. Now, I do think it's more important to the newer generations that they understand why they're doing what that is, what the reason for it is, what's the bigger picture for it. And one of the things that we stressed at our company was, because we said about the career, is on the org chart, we explained, here's where you are today, but here's where I can take you to right here.
That's
you never
nice.
need to leave. If you want, that's fine, but you're going to be able to rise up into these positions where you're basically running your own company by our set of rules, and you're going to determine how much money you make yourself. It's not us. And so that really became the attractive stickiness to it. So I think
But
if you think you're just going to come out like and present the 10 commandments to people and they shall obey, you're going to be very sorry.
yeah, yeah.
You're going to be
Well,
very sorry.
well, definitely, I can see that. I think the one thing is writing the manual and getting it all orchestrated and written. The other thing is training it to make sure people do something with those words, right? I mean, having the
Yeah.
manual is one thing, but not using it, sticking it on a. I mean, I've seen several companies
Yeah. It
like,
used
"Don't
to
you
be
have
where they
Al's
just
manual?"
put it
I
on a
said, "I see you
shelf.
got Al's manual up right up there. Why are we not using this?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, shoot, I haven't." I said, that manual is intended to be used for training purposes. You realize that? It shouldn't be sitting on your desk. Everybody should have a poster of some of it. It should be posterized, I call it, so people can see some of it bigger and some of it on your desk. So it
Today
should
it's
come to
all
life. Does it
digital.
make sense?
Today it's all digital. These guys are all working with tablets. Everything gets delivered to them digitally. They only have the most current version. We get to lock them out when they leave. But the problem, Joe, is even the LMS, learning management systems, is I'm going to put it all up in Tranual and they're magically going to go through it themselves. I have zero idea what you meant when you put those words on that page. So
Mm-hmm.
you're going to trust me? What you really need to do in recruiting, hiring, then orientation
Mm-hmm.
is if 80% of that is how they fill the box, you and I, your manager, and you, we're going to read those manuals out loud and we're going to discuss it because this is my best chance to get you stepping right off the dock into where you need to be on the right boat with me, doing the job the right way. And they just want it on autopilot or just watch some videos. They can just click, click, click their way through and take whatever. It's not as automated as you like it
No.
to be. That's really the problem. That's also like in your sales system. It takes training, not one-time training, and then retraining and keeping it, it's like having a knife and never sharpening it. Why would you
Yep.
do that? It's ridiculous. And that's just this whole concept. The sales part of it, the operational part of it, the staffing part of it. We actually used to do the same thing with staffing power, which is really always recruiting, always hiring, always orienting, what I was
Mm-hmm.
just talking about, always training. And here's the piece that all of us miss. We assume you're on the team, but you're not. And that's what we call always retaining. So I need to be able to do that. And staffing really is that, which is how can I take you from a young, willing apprentice with no skills to a willing type with great skills, and also all the other boxes. How do you train them up? So that's sales, that's staffing. Then in sales is, remember I said about WIFM? Well, what's in it for me?
Yeah, yeah.
So for as a service tech, if I go above the sales thing, what do I get? And there's really three ways to pay. You can say I have a unique, totally different system, but there's three ways to pay. Hourly salary that goes up, and that's all you make. And it's really the worst. And I was born into it because of a union shop. Then we moved to salary plus bonus for going above goal. And that really got sharper when I worked with Ellen Rohr.
Mm-hmm.
But really, that's money they create, Joe. How many contractors have you worked with, especially at the beginning? I'd walk into it, and the crime of it is they weren't making money, and to pay bonuses that were attached to nothing sensible. They were taking money out of their own kids' Christmas gift money to give to the shop because they had not figured out how to incentivize them the right way. So Ellen never even taught them this reward program until they had done the financial power, which is understanding financials the right way. And the last one, of course, is pay for performance, which is a commission-based pay. But as we both know, without a really great HR person, it's different every place you operate. And no offense, California being the toughest, it's,
It is.
you do not want to make a mistake with how you pay people, because if they find out, that's bad enough. But if they find out many years down the road, that's a thousand times worse.
Al, let me ask you a question. One of the things that we have here at Service MVP, and I'm sure you run into the same thing, which is that a lot of times owners or leaders who own the company, uh, and we're both blessed to be associated with both Ellen Rohr and Tommy Mello and people like that. So
Right?
we have run into concentric circles in a lot of ways like that. One of the things that I find, and I'm sure you have found too, is that the leader of the company thinks that yeah, we got to get my people trained. And I said, yeah, you know, the first people you got to train is in the mirror. Have you thought about that? And what do you think about that one, Al? Could you comment on that a little bit?
I was lucky enough, reflecting back, Joe, is I had a lot of really industry trusting friends who would be happy to hold up the truth mirror to my face, whether I wanted to look at it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I was moaning and groaning to my friend who was a New Jersey guy, had a really great shop in Jersey City. And I'm talking about, oh, my competition does this and my competition does that. And, and then finally he just goes, Al, the only competition you had was the guy you were staring at in the mirror when you were shaving this morning. And I didn't like it, but of course it was absolutely spot on. And it really is the hardest thing to do, which is your people can't move up if you, as the owner and leaders of the company, can't move up. And that's sharpening your skill set, which is something, by the way, I used to do at the very end, which is called leadership power. And people love that, Joe. People love leadership power because it's all about goal setting and how to reverse engineer it. And then, we go through the negative messages in our head to turn them into positive messages. We do a lot of stuff. And universally, my clients would go, oh, we love this. Why didn't we do this right away? I basically tell them the same story, which is, I stumbled across you. You're in a pool about to drown. This is not the time to teach you how to swim. Mm-hmm. My job is to pull you to the side, get you out of the water, talk about how we learn how to swim in the first place before you end up in the pool. And then, of course, leadership really cements that. There's no wrong time to do leadership. But yeah, you have to work on your own skills. And I was lucky enough, I belonged to, that's how I met Ellen. It was C2000, which of course today is Nexstar. And, it really opened my eyes to what other contractors were doing. And part of that was also my great friend, Dan Holohan, me and Ellen and Dan were in the same group. And he said, you've got to get out of the tiny pool you're in, and you've got to get into a much bigger pool. And that was Nexstar.
Well, Dan is a great mentor of mine too, because I'm from the Northern Illinois, Chicago, Illinois area, and there was a lot of hydronic heating we did in there, and he was a great mentor, and I read his articles and went to his training with great admiration, and he one of the people who built me into one of the people I am today, just like you, I guess, right?
Yeah, I was very lucky. How many people can say that they had Dan Holohan riding shotgun in their truck, running calls and shoot? We used to shoot videos together in basements and whatnot. But what is, without people going to Google now, figuring out who is Dan Holohan, it's as great as he was in hydronic heating, most people missed it. He was great at sales and marketing. And he was actually a coach to me. And I was already pretty good at sales and marketing, but he had such a great opinion. And one of the things he taught me about sales and marketing, I'll never forget, is that, Al, what you say about yourself is semi-interesting, but I really want to know what Joe Crisara, who lives in my neighborhood, says about how great you are or how wonderful this product is. And so people always ask, my customers used to ask me all the time is, well, why is this stressing about, testimonials and video testimonials and all that stuff? I said, because the only thing that counts is testimonials from their community and that they can identify and that are not initials with no locations and the rest of the stuff. It makes every bit of marketing you ever do that much more impactful, the stickiness. And for sales, not only overcoming objections, but if you become really great at sales, using it on the front end to build that trust and credibility, even before you get down to talking about the job, because no one wants to feel like a guinea pig. We all want social proof. And if you don't believe me, go to a strange town and tell me you won't go to Yelp or Google reviews to find out a place to eat.
Totally. One of the things I define whether people need your service or not is say, how do I know if I need this? And I always say, well, answer this question. And the people like you and Ellen and Dan and a lot of people I know that we have mixed people from Nexstar. I met with back when Nexstar got founded in 1992. I was Contractors 2000. I was at one of the very first meetings. But what I noticed the difference is this. When you are familiar, you don't need Al Levy's program when you can answer a simple question. And the question is, tell me how this place works, because when
Right.
when you've done an operating manual that you do, everybody knows how the place works, and they can recite it from memory. Like that manual isn't just sitting in a book. The owner and the managers can tell you how the place works. If you cannot tell somebody how your place works, here's Al Levy to help you define that for yourself and your team, so they can understand how this place works. Al, what do you think of that test?
I absolutely agree with that. And the same thing was, can I pick anybody, one of your techs who goes to jobs and supposedly sells stuff, and have them give me whatever the 3, 5, 10 steps to sales at your company, and I can pick another one, and they can give me the exact same steps in the exact same order. Because if they can't, you do not have a sales system. You have a go wing it system, and there's going to be problems. And the way I try, coming from a technical background, is when I would teach sales, one of the things I used to say to them is, especially if I was a heating guy, I go, so imagine this, the first no heat call you go down to the basement and check on the equipment. The next one you go to, you start the thermostat. The next one you go to the vent. Are you going to miss something? Absolutely going to miss something. So why is it different with sales? We don't just get to the door. Frankly, you shouldn't leave your truck until you're totally organized. Your thoughts are clear. You know why you're here. What are you looking for? And when I trained my own guys, they were not sales robots, but they were technically expert at what they were doing because they had been trained in my house, not your house, on how to sell and do all these things. And they were excited for the opportunity to see if they could identify a problem or challenge that they might be having, or something that they didn't even know could be fixed, because so many other people had been there and said, well, that's just the way it is. And customers think that's what it is, but it isn't. And sales and marketing are really what I like to think of, two sides of a coin. Ellen, you know, she would be riding in the car with me as we would go to clients, and she'd always ask me a question as I was driving. And one day she said to me, Al, what comes first, sales or marketing? And I, without a hesitation, said sales. And she goes, well, if you're not great at marketing, the phones aren't ringing, you're going to go out of business. I go, if you're not great at sales, which means you can sell to one ideal customer, which means you can sell to 10, 100, 1,000, a million of your ideal customers, because you know intrinsically what makes them tick. You've got loads of testimonials from that target audience. And if you can do that, you're already on your way to becoming better at marketing.
That's great wisdom, Al. Well, Al, they always, I could talk for hours, and every time I talk to you, I learn more and more. Thank you for spending time with us here. Al,
Thank you for the
let's
opportunity.
update us to the year. Let's move to the year 2025. What can people do to tap into your wisdom and your content so that they can help their business? Tell us what people can do to get involved with whatever tell us what the most current thing you're doing is, and how can people tap into that?
Yeah, the very best thing to do is go to the number 7powercontractor.com, the website. There's a lot of free information. Yes, as I mentioned, I've been around quite a while, and it's still very much used for a lot of the content. But go to the blogs. There's a lot of good information. And if interested, there's testimonials in the success gallery, but then there is products. Take a look at those and do what Joe said, is, do you have these things in place? You have these systems in place? So that's really what we're putting together. This stuff is all moved to online. Al will not be coming to your shop and working with you one-to-one anymore. And I don't care if you back up a tractor trailer full of cash. The answer is still no.
Well, one good thing is that if you search Al Levy podcasts, you'll see a bunch of them come up. So you'll have a lot of
That's true.
Al
There's
on your
a lot of
Al on your
podcasts,
phone
people
and
like
your
yourself.
earbud if you
Exactly.
want to. Makes sense.
Great stuff.
Al, thanks a lot for being here today, and thanks for the service you have provided the entire service community, and thanks for your service to Service MVP too. You definitely have been a major player, even though we haven't have a direct involvement. I definitely have you in my back of my head as I'm designing specific operating procedures for this place. You definitely
Absolutely.
I have your voice in my back of my head. Is this the right thing? After reading the book and seeing you on stage and things like that. Al, thanks a lot for everything you do. I really
Thank you
appreciate
for the
you.
opportunity. Great to talk to you, Joe, as always. Great stuff that you have to share.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the next podcast, everyone.